So, hi there. Welcome to our first episode of our vendor hot seat. And I am so glad that we've got Sabina and Shayna here from Clio. Appreciate you guys being willing to take a chance on the hot seat. Anyway, why don't you, to kind of get us started, tell us who you are and then tell us a little bit just in general what Clio does.
Yeah, I'll kick things off. I'm Shayna. I am actually the partner account manager that works with Clear Guidance. So I am that main point of contact that they have at Clio to really help. If you guys are looking for or evaluating LPM, I'm that main point of contact. And then I'll bring in Sabina, who is our account executive. Actually, Sabina, do you want to share a little bit about Clio and your background? Because you have a really cool background prior to coming over here.
Yeah, I'm a recovering lawyer, as I always like to say. I practiced in litigation, several firms here based in Texas. In terms of Clio, we're kind of at a very interesting point in our, I think, evolution. I think traditionally Clio, like a lot of different legal practice management solutions, for you hear it said in many different ways, like a virtual file folder, your file is in the cloud, encompassing all kinds of matter management, which includes like task management, as well as document management, billing, invoicing, all within the platform. Now, over the last year, it's a very exciting time because we're really now going into the practice of law as well. So helping firms not only track and have like a system of record, but also ensure that the way that they're practicing law is really optimizing, getting rid of some of the kind of traditional issues that have sort of plagued lawyers. So strong focus in terms of AI and how we're solutioning for that. But bringing together now legal research as well as like AI document analysis to help with the practice of law as well. So
Very cool. So, you can do all of that within Clio. Um,
correct. It's matter
so
of where. Yeah.
Right. So I think something when people are looking and evaluating practice management or any kind of, system that they want to use, a lot of times they will see all of the full bells and whistles. They'll see all of the modules and they'll see all of the full bells and whistles. And then sometimes they don't drill down enough and then they'll get a basic package and they're surprised when they get it that it doesn't include necessarily all those things that they looked at. So how at the moment, how are your offerings structured? What do you sort of get? And then what are sort of add-ons or what are kind of like the different modules that you can get?
Yeah, that's a great question. Clio, we're so agnostic in terms of not only practice areas, but also the size of firms that we deal with. Shane and I work on our mid-market team, which is fairly broad. It kind of encompasses anything between 20 users all the way up to like 200, sort of our sweet spot. But of course, Clio serves solo, small firms, and even enterprise, international law firms through some of our acquisition partners. And so, because of that, our packages are modular in a way, right? So that we can service and provide things for firms that want, X, Y, and Z, and then others maybe have more pared down solutions that they're only looking for maybe billing, right? So, in order to accommodate that, we have a couple of different packages and then a couple of different modules. What's really important, I will say, is to have a deep, meaningful discovery. So, I always view my role, and I think most of our team here will view us kind of as consultants, less than sort of sales, because we really need to understand what the firm currently has and what they're aspiring to do and what their priorities are and what their kind of, most kind of things that come up right now, things like AI, right? Do you have a policy? Do you have a plan? Do you have a vision? Are you just collecting information? Like, where are you on that journey, right? Are you just coming from a server and so you're wanting just to take that initial step into the cloud? What I will present to you then in a demonstration will be tailored to that.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't try, or I at least don't try to overshow if a firm
Mm-hmm.
be looking for kind of more bare bones and they're not ready to have that next
Mm-hmm.
conversation about some of the more advanced functionalities. I don't think, we don't really show that to avoid these kinds of confusion.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about setting expectations, right?
Right.
So avoid those kind of letdowns after like, oh, I was sold this and then, you didn't deliver.
Right.
So
Just to
all
jump in on that one, I think also what's really important and how, like, our partnership, goes hand in hand is, like, we
Mhm.
wanna be able to help these firms that are looking that are, or they're new and they're kind of old school and moving off from those files and they don't know what, to look for. We want to be able to set them up for success. And the way that we have not only like our partnership in place, but how, Sabina and her, sale techniques kind of work is truly understanding what the best fit would be for
Mhm.
and if they're going to be a good fit and if we can help them solve for X, Y, and Z, we'll put that forward for them. And if not, we'll help give some alternative solutions. But it's always like I always want to like make sure that, it's a process and we're not just
Mhm.
sell you for the sake of selling you on something that's not going to
Right.
work for you.
Right, right. So what are sometimes when people get into it, what are some of regrets that you've heard from clients who have done that? And I know that sometimes probably despite maybe your best efforts, depending on the sophistication of who you're working with or just sort of how they understand, what are some of the regrets that you hear once people kind of implement? What are the things they struggle through like right after kind of implementation in that first like 90 days to 6 months?
the most common thing that we hear is not getting enough people involved.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of times these are projects that are tasked on like one person who's doing all of the demonstrations, who's doing kind of all the evaluation aspect, who's negotiating really everything, right? And then they kind of communicate, okay, this is our choice. People, the rest of the stakeholders from your legal assistants, paralegals, associates, partners, they just kind of feel like they don't have a say,
Mhm.
make their needs, and it's impossible for one person to really understand everyone's roles and, like, the nuances, and so that's by far and away the most common
Mhm.
complaint is really that lack of input, right?
Mhm.
Feeling like you had a say, and that leads to kind of a harder change management kind of
Mhm.
issue on the back end. So
Okay,
we
so it
very
sounds
much
like
recommend, let's bring on more like, the most successful
mhm.
implementations and onboardings is when there's, like, a team,
Yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
that everyone's sort of represented and can feel like their needs are heard, being taken into account, and it's a group decision. Those firms are the ones that, uh, tend to do best.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
good
I
advice.
I
Mhm.
think also another important one is like understanding what your timeline is. Like, when are you looking to have this, task completed? When are you looking to be live, up and running? And so the firm is feeling comfortable and, everyone within the firm is comfortable with how this operates. I think making sure you leave enough time.
Mhm.
You kind of have to work backwards. Um,
Mhm.
that's one thing, another call out that I always hear as well.
So I think kind of what I hear that you're saying really encompasses really understanding the effort and time that this is going to take.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, it's often tasked to one person a lot, to at least do that initial research. And usually in every law firm that I know, everybody already has a full time job. So it is often tasked with somebody who's already very busy doing other things. So, really, I think making sure that firm leadership understands we need to get everybody involved and then also how much time this is going to take. So kind of thinking about that time, I want to talk about migration. What are kind of two things like sort of financial migration is one thing, but then sort of all of the other information. What are some of the pitfalls or what are some of the struggles that you see with people migrating? What are some of the things to look out for? And I know it might vary from where you're coming from, but so what are some of the struggles with migrating data that people can look out for? And then also, when it comes to financial data, what are some of your recommendations for being able to do that smoothly?
You know, really, any complexity of any migration will always depend on the quality and consistency of the customer's existing data.
Hmm.
That's just what it depends on. The tooling that we have, all like there's not really complexity in terms of how far back you want to go in
Hmm.
terms of financial history. That's just dependent, that's price, and what the
Hmm.
firm really needs. But it doesn't really increase complexity. That really depends on the quality and the consistency of the data. So any clean, well-organized data can move over quickly, smoothly. Data that's inconsistent, has gaps, may need extra mapping, validation, so we work with our firms and customers to ensure that the migration is accurate, reliable. How that's done is, we do a full scope, we do test migrations, give the customer time to look at their data, make sure that things are consistent and there's no gaps before we sort of move do the final
Mhm.
report. And then if there are issues that are identified, it's very much kind of a team effort. We very much try to provide guidance to our clients in terms of best steps forward in order to
Mhm.
resolve this. Unfortunately, most of the time it does involve some amount of just kind of manual cleanup. Uh,
Mhm.
that tends to be the most kind of cost effective way. But of course, there are always options.
Right. When it comes to cost, how does cost factor into like the amount of data that's migrated?
Uh, I mean, it depends. I guess the more data you want migrated, like
Mhm.
how far back, in terms of financial historicals that you mentioned earlier, that's going to increase the
Mhm.
amount that you're
Mhm.
paying for the financial migration. But these are one-time costs. These are not
Mhm.
ongoing, recurring expenses, and typically they range from a couple of thousand to
Mhm.
maybe a couple 20,000. So it's
Mhm.
not usually, something that's too restrictive in terms of, cost.
Yeah, but that's a good thing for people to talk about and think
Yeah,
about. How much
yeah,
data do they really need to bring
yeah.
over?
Well,
Good.
a lot of times it depends, sorry to cut you out. A lot of
No,
times
no.
it depends on, certain, like, state rules. So,
Mhm.
sometimes we know, like, courts require, firms to keep, like, 3 years of historical financials down to the sometimes it doesn't require at the invoice level, sometimes it does. So, again, what we really try to do is make sure like, align with the client on what their needs are, and
Mhm.
then we provide that service tailored to those needs. So, I always like I don't know for good, bad, or the ugly if it's good to use this example, but I always say we're kind of like Liberty Mutual in a way.
Mhm.
You only pay for what you need. So,
Uh-huh,
um,
uh-huh.
I
Well,
think that's that kind
good.
of
So when it comes what if people need to offboard? They decide that they're going to leave Clio. What is the process to get their data out?
yeah. Another good question. Very rarely does this happen. Um, really, all of the firm's data in Clio is fully exportable.
Mhm.
Right. There's a dedicated export page. Users can download everything into Excel essentially, which then can be
Mhm.
imported into any other system. We also have an option that allows you to set up a sync to copy all your data to like an S3 account that you own, giving you full control over your data.
Mhm.
There's no charge for this data
Mhm.
export or support. So
Okay. Well, that's good to know because that sometimes comes as a surprise
yeah.
when people are trying to leave. Now, you say it rarely happens. Why do you why so I guess do you know what your like customer retention rate is?
I don't know the
Right
specific.
off by hand.
Yeah.
But I will share, like, we ended off the year last year with over 400,000 legal professionals using Clio.
Wow. Wow.
So really, really, really big accomplishment for us. We've also been valued at a $5 billion company.
Mhm.
So
Awesome.
there is lots of, we kind of, trying to think of, like, the term to
Mhm.
say it, but, like,
Okay.
we practice what we preach, right? We
Right.
obviously are at, the top level
Mhm.
for a reason. We've been around, and we just
Right.
keep striving and striving to be that best LPM that
Yeah.
law firms need, and we keep showing that also with our products that we're adding. We have Clio Work, or, the largest legal library. That was a huge acquisition for us last year as well too,
Mhm.
of Vincent. So we're just really striving to be the best and keeping our heads down and doing what we do really
Well,
well.
well, that's good. Well, so 2 things then that you mentioned there. Well, one, I do wanna know when people do leave, is there any kind of commonality about when, like, customers do leave? Um, and I know sometimes people just make a poor choice and it's just not the right fit. Like, sometimes they just make a poor choice and it wasn't gonna work from the beginning. But do you hear anything is there any kind of commonality or any type of customer that's maybe not a good fit?
Mm, that's a good question. I don't think that there is any customer that's not really a good fit.
Mhm.
Um, we're just because Clio is so, like I mentioned earlier, practice
Mhm.
area agnostic, firm size
Mhm.
agnostic. We really have sort of tools that enable such a wide variety of firms and of wants and needs.
Mhm.
So no, I wouldn't say it. I don't think there's really any commonality. I think sometimes, sometimes I just think people see the grass might be greener, and they're
Right.
tempted by
Yeah.
stuff like offers that you can't refuse,
Right.
sometimes. And we see quite a bit of folks that end up coming back, you know?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh,
Uh-huh. They go and they come back.
yeah.
Well, so what's on you talk about how you're striving, and I know there's been a lot of stuff this year, and I know, like, Clear Work,
Uh-huh.
definitely AI. What are some of the things that are on the roadmap? I don't know if you can talk about that. What are some of the things that are maybe on the roadmap that you're looking at that aren't maybe in place right now?
What's not on the roadmap?
What literally everything's on the roadmap.
Um,
There's a lot.
Clio is a product that has continuously evolved, and will continue to evolve aggressively. The market demands it, and we're here to meet that. So
Mhm.
everything is on the table. Certainly, a huge focus is utilizing AI and
Mhm.
advanced AI to help our customers practice law in a much more efficient way.
Mhm.
And but that encompasses not only AI, but also advancements across our entire platform, making it more user friendly,
Mhm.
giving people more options, having more advanced reporting, having more cross-functional, cross-platform, sync, right?
Right.
So everything is on the roadmap, and our roadmap very much is fed by customer feedback, and market demand. So, things are always changing. It's always
Right.
that's sort of why I left practice of law and studied psychology, just because, unlike reading case law from, like, 1860,
Mhm.
technology, something that's just constantly developing, so it's exciting.
So about AI, and I know a big concern around AI is confidentiality and not training on data. So tell me about like AI as it works within Clio, like at any level. What's the security of that? Where does the data go when it is being fed into AI? And so, like, tell me a little bit about the security and people being able to use AI, and always, I mean, looking um, that no outsourced or sort of like large language models on the outside are training on your data.
Yeah, I guess just short answer is it's a closed
Mhm.
environment, utilizing Clio, Manage AI, Clio Work. It's not training any
Mhm.
underlying large language models.
Mhm.
We are a software that is built for lawyers, so guardrails, secure,
Mhm.
those are top concerns for us, as they are for our customers.
And you mentioned reporting. I think in the past, probably the complaint that I heard the most about Clio was reporting, that people couldn't get the reporting to be agile enough. They wanted, I mean, every firm runs differently. So every firm kind of wants to see some different things or wants to do some different things. I know that recently there's been actually some expansion with reporting
Yeah.
and agility. So now, are you hearing, what kind of complaints are you perhaps hearing now? But tell me a little bit about how reporting is maybe syncing all of those things across the different modules and different, aspects of Clio.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of reporting, I think historically we've always had what I would call configurable reports. So we've provided sort of standard reports across the board, that firms then can more or less filter and sort. And you're right. People wanted to, as the focus shifted on being like more data driven over the
Mhm.
last couple of years, we have heard more, requests for more flexibility, more customizations. And so that's exactly what we did. We released custom reporting last year,
Mhm.
to really address those concerns. The feedback has been extremely positive. So today, firms really can handle most of their day to day reporting natively, either by still configuring those pre-built reports or
Mhm.
building their own with the custom reports. That encompasses everything from billing, payments, revenue, matter, client visibility, time, productivity, task activity,
Mhm.
calendar, everything operational,
Mhm.
tools, all without having to rely on like external like add-ons. Um,
Right.
we're and Look, we're again always building. So from customer feedback, we know firms are looking for even more capabilities. So while we, have increased the functionality, we're still focused on enhancements in the near term, over the next year plus to encompass additional data sets across all of Clio products, advanced calculation functionality in system, continue upgrade in terms of the improvements of ease of use and build out of these reports, and then also focusing on enhancements like dashboards and
Mhm.
additional visualizations firms.
So when people are implementing Clio, is there I mean, are there custom reports that you build for them during that process, or does this custom reporting does it cost more?
Nope, it's included in most of our packages standard, and it's really intuitive and easy to use. So we do train users on how to build out the custom reports and help kind of build those out.
Okay. So, but it's included and it's not something that's additional. So it's not like after the fact when people say, "Oh, we need to get this," and you're like, "Oh, it'll be another $2,000, please."
Right.
No, another 4,000. We can do it, of course. It's
Huh.
another $4,000 once you get into it. Of course, we can do it. Okay. And so, tell me, so what do people say that they love the most, or what do you hear from people that they're relieved or that worked out well that they've moved over to Clio, or do you ever get to hear that? And I'm sorry if you don't, but
Sometimes we get to like on reference calls here a little bit. It just varies quite a bit. I think some of the things that, it just depends on like where the firm is coming from and what their needs were. But a couple of things that are kind of overarching. Just the ease of the UI, I think, is one thing
Mhm.
that we hear. Lawyers are, we don't like numbers. We don't want to do
Mhm.
math. We don't want to like learn a lot of new things. Like we already are busy. And law firms are incredibly busy, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's really helpful. Clio will you can find the same information a couple of different ways. And so you don't have to like remember really rigid processes when working
Mhm.
with Clio. So just the UI UX is really
Mhm.
user friendly. We hear really great feedback on our support. We really pride ourselves on our
Mhm.
support that we provide when things do, when our customers do need help and support. And then I think just in our mid-market space specifically, when we see a little bit more sophisticated needs, the fact that we have such an open API and play so
Mhm.
well with so many other tools, in fact, have over 250 already built
Okay.
integrations that we provide access to for our customers. We see that as great. We hear a lot of feedback on that as being something that firms really appreciate because sometimes you like what you like. Sometimes you want to use a tool that you're comfortable with that you don't want to change. And so to be able to pair that with your overall kind of nervous system of your firm, which is what I
Mhm.
kind of call a practice
Mhm.
management system, is really nice. So I think those would be kind of top three.
Okay. Well, that's good. Good to hear. So let's talk about something nobody wants to talk about, which is pricing. So, um, I think typically, how does your pricing work, sort of in general? And I think we've seen a lot of systems where the pricing has been increasing rapidly. I mean, not just Clio, but we've heard it from different places. I mean, it seems like the marketplace is increasing. And also, it seems like sometimes, people will get a really great rate to come on, there'll be some really great rate. And then maybe after that first year or after that first thing, the prices go up a great bit. Tell us just sort of a little bit how the pricing works. Sort of, are there tiers? How does it work in general right now? And then what do you look at? Like if you bring them in at kind of a discounted pricing, what does that leap or change look like when you get to the end of that contract?
I actually love talking about pricing.
Okay, you're in the
I
right
think
job.
important conversation. There are different budgets and again, because of how many different firms we work with, we do our in general our pricing. We have a couple of different pricing packages tailored, based on what the user, what the functionality the user is getting and based on the price point, right? And then a couple of other modules that people can purchase if they have that specific need. So we really try to not, include a lot of things that people won't
Mhm,
use, right? If they don't have those needs and that won't be of value to them. And then of course, from the more sophisticated firms with more sophisticated and more powerful needs, we have those packages, up priced accordingly. Um, where SaaS companies, our pricing is, kind of a per user, per month traditional SaaS pricing model. I think Clio pricing is actually very competitive in comparison to the overall market. And I will say another sort of positive for Clio specifically is just like as an example, if you look at our history over the last 8 years, our advanced pricing package has only increased pricing 2 times by
Oh,
$10
wow.
each time, and that was coupled with significant
Uh-huh.
functionality improvements across our product. We don't do kind of like, oh, for inflation, oh, every year
Uh-huh.
you get a 5% markup kind of pricing increases. It's really usually tailored to specific increases in
Mhm.
functionality. And we try to make it in a kind of modular way so that firms can determine if that's a need for.
Does everybody have to have the same um, modules? So, like, if I just have some people who maybe have a need, um, maybe for Clio work, but I've got a bunch of other people who don't. I mean, can you price that out differently?
Yeah, good. That's a great question. Some things, yes. So Clio work is a great example. Because Clio work is really that legal research
Uh-huh.
coupled with the document analysis, the litigation analysis and things like that. Um, That's, usually, purchased for the attorneys, associates, and usually some paralegals, if not
Mhm.
all paralegals. And so, yeah, that's something that does not need parity in terms of licenses
Mhm.
with overall Clio Manage. Certain things, like, that live within Clio Manage themselves are kind of in aggregate. So it depends.
Mhm.
Again,
Okay.
the factors depend on the functionality itself, right?
Mhm.
So
Okay. Okay. So not necessarily everybody has to get everything, but
correct.
it depends. So
Mhm.
like with Clio Manage, you probably need everybody to have everything. Okay. Well, good. Well, let me take a look at my questions. I think we covered a lot of this. Anything else you think if you have advice to give people who are, and I think we already covered some things that would be
Mhm.
really good, but if you've got advice for people who are going to be implementing or going to be making decision, what are like maybe 3 things you think they should really take into consideration?
Would say like one is like time. Now we're kind of in a good position, like we're in the new year. So a lot of firms are also looking back to see like how did 2025 end off? Or are there gaps that we need to fill? And that's, I think, the first thing to think about is like, what can we do better going into this new year for our business as a whole? So I would say like the time and like the business spent,
Yeah.
practicing law, like where can we solve for that? And I'd also say like what are the processes looking like? Are you experiencing again additional gaps? Do you have a seamless workflow? Are all of your platforms talking to each other? If not, then let's have a conversation so we can see how we can help you with
Yeah.
that as
Mhm.
well.
I'll close on the third. I think it's really important when you're making technology decisions for your firm to not like you have to look at it as okay, what are our current priorities and needs? And then I think you should also look like try to kind of have a 5-year aspirational
Mhm.
plan. Because you want to join with a technology partner that is aligned sort of with you because technology is always changing. Essentially, what you're going to be demoing is always going to be worse. Hopefully, if it's a good partner, worse
Right.
than even what you get once you're fully implemented and onboarded. And then certainly within, a year and a half into your term, right? And so I think it's important to not only think about your needs today. It's of course important to prioritize those, but also look out kind of what is important for the firm in the long term and partner with a technology partner accordingly. I think too few people do that.
Mhm.
Get kind of caught up in the weeds and they don't see the forest through the trees. So, 3 to 5 years down the road. Because and the reason why is even if we have all of the tooling, even if we do have like great teams to support you during the migration and the implementation process, the change management piece, all of that is still an incredibly hard thing for firms to do, right? Change
Mhm.
is never super easy. And that is just not something that I think most firms want to do on, certainly not on an annual, but most of our contracts are about 3 years. it's not really something we hear firms wanting to do every 3 years,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Um, so if you're committing to a partner for 3 years, you should really think about what your kind of goals and aspirations are within those overall 3 years, and, get a sense if you trust that partner to kind of be on that journey with you. And then, if you can forecast a little bit further on out than that, even better, right?
That's really great advice. Oh, this was great. Thank you guys. This has been very informative, really good information. I think you answered a lot of questions. I really appreciate it. Thank you.